Good morning and good evening. Welcome back to For the Lonely Nights. I'm Paul Kim, and thank you for joining us on this fourth episode of this podcast series. And we actually got some pretty cool stuff to talk about this week, because it's gonna be a little different from the past couple weeks, because the topics that I have prepared for this week, it's gonna be a little more discussion oriented. The ones in the previous weeks, they were just more topical stuff, things that I found, very cool that I want to kind of mention about. But this one, how I kind of came about to choosing these topics is, in this past week, actually, the same questions kind of came up throughout, just my regular interactions with people, and it definitely got me thinking about a lot of these. These are very debatable things. They don't really have an easy answer, and I'm sure, across the board, people are going to have very split opinions about this. So, with that being said, let's just, jump right into it with the first one right here. And so, the first one, to give a little backstory on it, I was visiting my cousin's family this past week, and it was like an informal celebration and a get together, because my birthday and my aunt's birthday actually falls on the same day. We share the same birthday, so we thought it was a great opportunity to just see each other's faces again, hang out, catch up, because these are the only relatives of ours that live in the US. Every other relative of ours currently resides in Korea. So, so we definitely thought this was a good chance. And we drove all the way up to La Crescenta. That's where they live. And we, spent the whole day there. But I was talking to, my younger cousin. He's going into his senior year in high school, and he was just kind of talking to me about college apps, and what any tips or advice I could give him, or just his worries, and his thought process going into this whole thing. And college apps is a scary time, applying for colleges, because you go through like 12 years of school, a good amount, just having that one goal in mind, college, get into a good college. And college apps, it finally hits you that it's time, it's time to finally just lay everything down on the line, and it's a make or break, kind of situation. But so my cousin, he was just worrying a lot, stressing a lot. And one of the things that he asked me about was just my extracurriculars and volunteer, hours, and like community service things I did during my time in high school and middle school that I put on my app. Because the college app, most of them have a section in the application where you jot down a couple things about your volunteer experience, things you did to help the community, your extracurricular activities, any jobs you had, where you were employed, things like that, so the colleges can get a better idea of who you are, and they can see that, what kind of experiences and what kind of things you've been doing, just in the time that you've had. And I would argue that it's a very important section. It maybe in Korea, all you have to really do is study a lot and get good grades, be in the top 5 of your class, and things might work out for you, but definitely here in the US, that's not necessarily always the case. Even if you have a good GPA, that's just kind of like the basis. The colleges are looking for a little more. They want to see extracurriculars, the passions that you kind of pursued in the time that you had during school, some sports that you did, or they want to see that you're a pretty strong candidate all across the board, not just in academics. And therefore, this part of the application, it's a very I think it's a very stressful part for a lot of college applicants. I know it was very stressful for me too. um, but yeah, my little cousin was asking me, he was telling me how he was just so focused upon his grades and studying his academics, and um, he invested a lot of uh, his life into um, a few things, like piano. He's been playing that ever since he was a kid. Swimming, he put in a lot of years into swimming as well. But other than that, there wasn't really anything else that he could really put on that college application. um, and so he was asking me like, hey, I'm kind of worried, I think I focused a little too much on investing myself into these few things that, you know that's all I really have. And I don't really have anything else, that I can uh, put on this app and show colleges that, I'm a good candidate, that I've been really making use of my time. And so, thinking about that, I kind of came across this question, that I wanted to talk about today here. And it's a question of, is it better to have committed yourself and your time, years and years of your life into one thing, or a couple things, um, and just really get good at those, really um, develop yourself in those things? Or is it better to maybe be less developed in, these things, but have experienced much more variety of things, so you definitely have your um, you definitely have your hand in a lot of things across the board. And yeah, you may not have invested yourself as much as um, the first instance right there, when you really just kind of commit yourself to a few things rather than, a little less commitment with a lot of things. I hope you guys understand what I'm trying to say. But yeah, that's just a question I kind of wanted to talk about. And this is a perfect example right here with the college app with my little cousin and I. My little cousin would be the first instance right there. He invested himself a lot into a few things, and he is an amazing pianist. He is a great swimmer. He has, a lot of trophies and medals to prove for that too. And he's got a great GPA. He really focused and studied hard during high school. But me, on the other hand, I would say I kind of represent the second uh, example a little more, because in my time in high school and middle school, I was just involved in a lot of things, whether it be through my school or church, um, or even like sports teams, things like that. I was involved in film, like I talked about last week, I believe. Film, cinema, conservatory. I was involved in my school's news program. I was involved in sports. I did wrestling, and um, yeah, in high school, that's all I did. And um, in church, I definitely invested myself a lot in church as well, whether it be being part of the worship team at church, being part of the missions team, going out to homeless shelters and volunteering there, um, and all of these things, that I kind of took part in throughout my time in high school. um, I wouldn't really say that I invest in a lot of myself into any one of these things. I wouldn't say I spent, years and years, and hours upon, every week, pouring myself out into these things to develop myself into these things. Yeah, I mean, for sure, I, you know, would do these things maybe once a week, a couple times a week. But there really is a difference, and you can tell when someone really truly commits himself to an art or to one thing rather than kind of doing it to do it, And so we have the two sides of the spectrum here. And for me, so when my college apps kind of rolled around, it was very easy for me to fill up the list, of all the extracurriculars, all the volunteer hours, all the community services, sports, the things I did. It was very easy to fill them up, but my problem lied with, filling out the actual information, how many hours I put into this per week, how many years have I done this for, how involved was I into these things. And when I was filling that part out, I could really see, myself, and the things I did. It was very shallow, so to speak. If I was definitely, at working at the college and looking at these applications, and I saw, oh, this guy did a lot of these things. He was involved in a lot of things, but at the same time, I can definitely see that it wasn't a big time commitment. He didn't necessarily put a lot of the hours or a lot of the effort into these things, and therefore, can I really consider it, the same way as someone who definitely, invested themselves a lot into that. But at the same time, is it better to just have more things, on the list than, let's say one or two things, but being really good at them? And so, yeah, I feel like I'm going a little back and forth here in circles, but honestly, I don't know. I think definitely, like many things, it might depend on the circumstances. If we're using this college application as a prime example, I would say in this case, I would say it's better if you have a lot of things to show on the surface, and even if they're not as fully developed, because I feel like in the application process for colleges and maybe even jobs, and career wise, as well, it's not like these people who are reviewing your apps are just sitting there and like spending an hour or two really analyzing your application. They probably receive thousands and thousands of these applications, and they're kind of zooming through them, skimming through them. I think I read this somewhere, like statistically a person spends like 16 seconds or looking at a resume or looking at an application before they move on to the next one. And so definitely in this case, having a lot of things just listed down is at first glance and at first impression just much more attractive and much more appealing to the person reviewing these applications than someone who may have definitely invested themselves a lot but only into a few things. But I could definitely see it the other way. Maybe if someone was looking for a particular skill, or you were up kind of trying to join a swim team, or I don't know, an orchestra or whatever it is, these roles, these positions that you are kind of pursuing, they have specific qualifications that are necessary, that are required for you to be in that position. And what really sets you apart from others, that are applying for the same position as you, is just how much more you've dedicated yourself to this practice, this discipline, how much more you've committed your time and your effort and hours of your day, into this thing. And that's really what sets you apart from others. If someone was applying for, let's say, the pianist role, in this grand orchestra, I'm not sure if orchestras really use pianos these days. I'm assuming so, but let's say we have that, and I was deciding, out of two people, and they both practiced piano a lot, but one person, when I see their app, they spent, ever since they were a kid, every day they would spend around 10 hours practicing piano. They would involve themselves in just consume themselves in just kind of bettering themselves and just mastering this art. And the other person, they spent, let's say, 5 hours a day. That's still very respectable. That's, honestly, to me, that's something I can't really do. I don't think I'd be able to do with any one thing, but obviously, when it comes down to it, I would choose the person who spent the 10 hours, who spent more and committed themselves more to this, because that just looks better on my part. Yeah. And so, I'm, like I said, I'm not here to give a definitive answer on these things. Just definitely something to think about. But I think it's very interesting, and I've met people definitely who were definitely fall on both ends of the spectrum. And I can't speak for everyone who kind of share the similar experiences as me, where we're kind of more spread out and a little less shallow on these things, but we definitely have experienced a lot more things. At least for me, when I look at people who really have dedicated themselves into one or two things, sometimes I get really jealous, and sometimes I give them respect, because I give respect where respect's due. It's really something that to me is very just amazing. And sometimes I wish, dang, maybe I should have done that. I should have just chosen one or two things that I'm passionate about, that I like, that I'm good at, and just really dedicate myself to those things. But I'm sure, on the other side, like my little cousin here, he kind of wishes, he looks at us, those people who have experienced a lot more things, and maybe he thinks the same. Maybe he's like, dang, maybe I should have spent a little less time just focusing on this, and a little extra effort to kind of broaden my horizons, and get to experience a little more things, and to do a little more things with the time that I have. But we always want what we don't have, I guess. But yeah, that's kind of all I want to speak on that. I know the first one went on for a little longer than I thought, but let's move on to the second one right here. And this one I'm going to title the vacuum scenario. And why I call it the vacuum scenario is because this past couple days, we have a vacuum at our home, right? It's this really nice vacuum. It's a wireless one, or cordless one, I would say. Lightweight, has great, power to it. And we've been using it for a few years now. And a couple days ago, we noticed that whenever we turn it on, there's this really loud and rattling noise, that goes on inside the vacuum. And it just kind of gets to the point where it seems like the vacuum itself is just going to explode. And so we're like, oh, what's going on? My dad is he's a handyman, so he likes to fix a lot of things on his own. I think I definitely got that trait from him as well. And so we kind of opened it up, and we were just kind of looking at the parts, seeing if we could find what the problem is and fix it. And no matter what, we did, the sound wouldn't go away. It would just continue. It would just still be there. And so uh, we didn't really know what to do. It looked like we disassembled every single part and looked at it, and we couldn't find the problem. Um, and then I remembered I bought a vacuum last year as well, for when I was living by myself when I moved out. And this vacuum is almost brand new. I probably used it um, only like a handful of times at most. And I remember, it's a good vacuum as well, not as good as the one that we have, but it's still a good one. It has a cord, that you have to kind of drag with you everywhere. Little less power, but it works fine. It's a perfectly functional vacuum. And so um, I'm like, hey, since this one doesn't seem to be working anymore and we can't find the problem, let's just throw this one away and let's just use the other vacuum that we have. Um, but then my dad, maybe it's a pride thing, or maybe, he really wanted to kind of fix this thing, but he's like, no, man, like this is an expensive vacuum. It's a good vacuum, way better than that other one. So I'm gonna keep working on this thing until I can find the problem and I can fix it. And this went on for a couple days. Every time he would try something and test it out, vacuum's still broken, it still makes that noise. And meanwhile, we're here just using my other vacuum. And um it works a little less, not as well, but it gets the job done. And so I was just kind of thinking, with this thing, and it's very similar to what we are kind of discussing with the first topic there. But if you were in this position, and you were faced with a really nice vacuum, you really, you really like this one, you spent a lot of money on it, spent a lot of time on it too. And would you continue to invest your time and efforts into fixing that, or would you throw it away, so that you can kind of start fresh with this other one that's not as good, but at the same time you wouldn't be kind of wasting your time and you know wasting your efforts on this one and on the other one that doesn't seem to be cooperating with you no matter what you do. um and kind of saying it out loud right now, it honestly seems like a dumb thing to kind of contemplate about, but it was interesting to me, so I just wanted to talk about it here. And obviously, like I said, like I shared in the story, I was the second example here. I told my dad, hey, you spend enough time on that, obviously it's not working, let's just move on. And obviously my dad's the first one. He's like, no, I'ma stick with this till the end. I'ma stick with this until I know for sure that there is not even a slight bit of hope left for this. And honestly, this can speak to not only the vacuum or objects, but to people as well, to relationships. And I'm gonna preface this right here because I know maybe some people might get the wrong idea. This is not how I view relationships, uh you know as well. I definitely think I have a different kind of approach when it comes to relationships with people, friendships, and things like that. But yeah, it's a definitely an interesting question to ask, in kind of the relationship setting. And obviously that the elephant in the room would be when you're in dating someone, when you're in a uh, in a romantic relationship with somebody, um and you find out you're kind of with this person and there's some problems along the way. uh and these problems aren't minor things that you can kind of work out easily or work out very smoothly, but these are just pretty major things, pretty heavy hitting stuff. And I know a lot of, I'm sure a lot of you guys have experienced one or two of those things, kind of experienced your fair share of those. And so you know what I'm talking about when I say kind of heavy hitting stuff. And I feel like even in my past relationships, I found myself asking this question at some point. I'm like, hey, like, these things are rough, you know. We spent months and months trying to figure this out, trying to do it this way and that way. It doesn't seem to be getting any better. And you know, at first these problems seem like something that you know, we can both definitely work out and get over, and you know, kind of leave it, but move on from. But just now, it's just, you know, after investing months into this, a lot of time, a lot of sleepless nights, you know, it's just like, dang, is it really something that that we can overcome, or is it just something that kind of telling us that it's time to kind of move on and look for, you know, yeah, just kind of move on from that relationship, you know. And you know, honestly, even now, I can't really say. I think definitely going into my first couple relationships, I definitely had that mindset of like, dang, like, I want to stick with this person till the end, you know. It's a ride or die situation. All these things, we're gonna get around it, we're gonna get around to fixing it, it's gonna work out. Like, nothing can overcome my affection for this person, you know. And that's a very, you know, it's a very naive way of thinking, of course. But you know, in your first couple relationships, that's just kind of how most people think. And but obviously, you know, as I'm talking about it now, you know, these things that didn't work out. These things weren't stuff that we could overcome, and maybe we could have. Who knows? If we spent a little more time, a little more effort on it. But I mean, things happened, and we just both decided to move on from it. And now I would say I'm kind of leaning more towards the other side. I think definitely it is a nice sentiment to think that, oh, I can really definitely overcome anything and everything with this person. But you know, so, like, sometimes not everything works out perfectly like that. As everyone knows, life isn't that simple. Relationships definitely aren't that simple, and sometimes these things just aren't meant for you guys to work out. And these things are just very prominent, you know, flags and signs telling you that you should really kind of step back and kind of think everything through a little more, once again, and see where you're at, where this other person is at, and kind of see where you want to go with this. And I know, at least for me, you know, just like this vacuum thing, my dad spent days on working on this thing. And so there's always, you know, that kind of feeling of, you know, I spent so much time and effort, and I invested so much of myself, you know, into doing this thing, into fixing this vacuum, or making this relationship work, into this one person. It's just going to seem like such a waste if I stop now and give up now. And so, you know, you keep tiring yourself out, you keep getting frustrated, you know, putting yourself in those frustrating situations over and over again, you know, and looking for some sort of answer, some sort of hope that, you know, there's still life to this thing. But sometimes, you know, it's just not there. This is just what I believe in. I think definitely when it comes to the vacuum and when it comes to relationships, I think you definitely need to know when to quit. And I know that sounds very harsh, like a very bad thing to say. But personally, I think it speaks truth. You need to know when to just call it. You need to know when to understand that this thing is kind of bigger than your affection for this person, you know. And at a certain point, you're just kind of putting yourself through all this exhaustion and um, frustration and, you know, torture at the end of the day, not because of, you know, this person anymore, this relationship anymore, or the vacuum anymore. You're doing it because of the time you already spent, you know, that you don't want going to waste. And so at that point, your whole kind of goal, I would say, or your whole kind of, you know, point of doing all of this has changed. And I would say, honestly, before you even get to that point, before you waste even more time and effort on this thing, um, learn to take it head on, learn to move on, and learn to grow from it. That's what I would say. But you know, I'm sure other people have different ideas. And you know, I'm not saying that every little problem you should kind of think about moving on, or think about, you know, every little problem should be a reality check or anything like that. But you know, I think definitely when it comes to the bigger things, I think it definitely is very valuable if you really take the time to think it through and not just kind of go headstrong into the void or whatever it is. But yeah, hopefully you understood me through that. I don't know honestly how it got into like a dating seminar or anything like that, but that's what I call the vacuum scenario. I thought it was pretty interesting. I thought it definitely had some pretty relevant values to it. So there we go. And yeah, going on to the third thing here. This one's gonna be pretty short. This is another topical thing. No more of these long discussion things. I'm pretty sure you guys are kind of tired of hearing this already. So let's move on to the third and final topic. And this one, I'm pretty excited about because this is, I'm gonna say the first installment for our section in this podcast series. I'm gonna call it For the Gaming Nights. You know, we're gonna talk about games, and this very first one, it definitely hits home. It's a very nostalgic one, and I'm sure some of you guys know it. It's called Infinity Blade, the Infinity Blade series. Oh my goodness, this is definitely my childhood right here. I remember kind of when I was in middle school, or I don't know, maybe it came up before too, but I had my iPad in front of me, and Infinity Blade, this game would be the only thing I would play day after day, you know, months after months. You know, this Infinity Blade 1, 2, and I haven't played 3 yet, but 3, you know, the whole series right there. And if for those of you who don't know what Infinity Blade is, it's just pretty much a mobile game. I would say the peak of mobile gaming, where your character is just this guy, you know, fully decked out in armor and weapons. You know, you could customize the armor and weapons as you go along, and you're pretty much going through the storyline, and along the way you have to fight, you know, these giant dudes, these warriors, monsters. And even in the game, there's these things called the Deathless, where they're pretty much immortal beings, you know, and you just have to fight your way through. It's a very interactive game. It's a very fast-paced game as well, and yeah, you know, this game definitely, I had a lot of fun with it. I even got so invested and involved into this game that they actually have books. They released books that kind of tie up the story in between every one of these games. You know, 1, 2, and 3. It's this one like long, complicated, grand story, and obviously you can only tell so much of the story in each game, so they release books that kind of filled in the gaps between each game, and kind of gave a little backstory and foundation and a little world building around these games. And so I remember, like, when I first found out that they had books on these things, I bought them as soon as I could. I was reading them at home, I was reading them in class in school. I remember one time, my English teacher in high school, uh, he was kind of walking around and he saw me reading this book, and he's like, "Oh, like, what is that book about? Like, tell me about it." And I didn't want to tell him, like, "Oh, I'm reading a book about uh a mobile game where you kind of fight people with swords." So I'm just like, "Oh, it's just a book that kind of contemplates between the struggles between immortality and um the struggles of life," or whatever it is. I gave some BS answer like that, and the English teacher was like, "That's nice. Maybe I should read it too." But yeah, like I said, super invested into this. And yesterday, actually, I was reminded of this game, and it was out of nowhere, really. It's been years and years since this game's been in my mind. It's been definitely a while since the last time I played it, and yeah, just all of a sudden I was just reminded of this game, so I searched it up to see if I can, download it again, maybe play the third one this time. And unfortunately, it is not available in the App Store anymore. The creators of this game, Epic Games, they, for some reason, I guess they took it down. If you guys don't know, Epic Games is also the creators of Fortnite, and Fortnite, that's another big hitter right there. They definitely hit it out of the park with that one. Super popular. And I think even now it's still going pretty strong. But yeah, they I don't know why, but apparently now you can't play Infinity Blade anymore. But that didn't stop me from searching it up on YouTube and looking at all of the gameplay and walkthroughs, and just reliving this epic story, of Infinity Blade. So but honestly, if you guys want to definitely check this out, I'm sure you can find it somewhere on the internet. You can still find a way to download it and play it. You can find almost anything these days. So yeah, if you get the chance, definitely check this game out. I would strongly recommend it. Great stuff. And if you really enjoy it, check out the books as well. They're very short and definitely ties in the story very well. But that's enough about that. Infinity Blade, great game. And to end off this podcast, I want to read you guys a passage from James. Actually, James, my favorite book of the Bible. And for this week's, it comes from chapter 5, verses 13 through 16. Is anyone among you in trouble? Let them pray. Is anyone happy? Let them sing songs of praise. Is anyone among you sick? Let them call the elders of the church to pray over them and anoint them with oil in the name of the Lord. And the prayer offered in faith will make the sick person well. The Lord will raise them up. If they have sinned, they will be forgiven. Therefore, confess your sins to each other and pray for each other so that you may be healed. The prayer of a righteous person is powerful and effective. Amen. So yeah, thank you guys for joining us for another great episode of For the Lonely Nights. Always excited to have this time with you guys and with myself, and yeah, excited to see what's in store for the weeks to come. So have a fantastic week. I'll see you guys next time, and as always, all glory to God.